Before Columbine, before Sandy Hook, before Uvalde, there was Stockton. In 1989, a man walked onto a playground and opened fire on hundreds of children. America swore it would never happen again, but it did, over and over and over. Stockton, California, a city built on farming and immigration. In the 1980s, its demographics shifted dramatically as thousands of Southeast Asian families, Cambodian, Laotian, Vietnamese, resettled here, fleeing the killing fields and the aftermath of war. Many of their children attended Cleveland Elementary School. It was a modest public school, serving as both a learning ground and a symbol of safety in a new land. But on one cold morning in January 1989, that safety would be shattered. Patrick Edward Purdy was born on November 10, 1964, in Tacoma, Washington. He would die 24 years later in Stockton, California, in an elementary school playground, by his own hand after murdering 5 children. His story was never just about one man with a gun. It was about what happens when mental illness, hatred, and societal failure collide. And no one is paying attention. Patrick's childhood was chaotic. His father, an alcoholic and a violent man, abandoned the family when Patrick was just 2 years old. His mother, Kathleen, moved frequently, taking jobs as a nurse's aide, a waitress, and a bartender. But she wasn't stable either. By age 13, Patrick had already been placed in foster care. His school records were filled with red flags: truancy, aggressive behavior, disturbing drawings of violence, and war. Teachers noted that he was often bullied, but also that he bullied others. He struggled to focus, and his temper flared unpredictably. During adolescence, Patrick's psychological problems became more pronounced. He was eventually diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a condition marked by delusions, social withdrawal, and irrational thinking. But despite multiple encounters with mental health professionals, there was no long-term treatment plan, no hospitalization, no follow-up. In the 1980s, funding for psychiatric care was slashed across California. Thousands of mentally ill individuals were left to fend for themselves. Patrick was just one of many who slipped through the cracks. Between 1980 and 1987, Purdy was arrested at least 7 times. Charges included illegal weapons possession, resisting arrest, drug possession, vandalism, and solicitation of prostitution. In 1986, he was arrested in Stockton for firing a semi-automatic pistol into the air and threatening a group of Cambodian men. No one was hurt. He served only 32 days in jail. Police seized several illegal weapons from his home, including a modified shotgun, ammunition, and a military helmet. He was placed on probation, but no weapons ban was imposed. Just 2 years later, he would legally purchase a semi-automatic Norinco AK-47, a Chinese clone of the infamous Soviet assault rifle. Patrick's hatred had a focus: immigrants, particularly Southeast Asians. In his eyes, they were taking jobs, diluting American culture, and prospering while he failed. He believed they were to blame for everything wrong in his life. His journals, recovered after the shooting, were filled with angry, incoherent rants, racial slurs, anti-government conspiracies, a disturbing fascination with war. Some believe he was obsessed with the Vietnam War and saw himself as a kind of soldier in his own war, fighting an imaginary enemy that lived in his own mind. On January 10, 1989, just 1 week before the massacre, Purdy returned to Stockton and checked into the El Rancho Motel. Over the next few days, he began preparing for what he later described in a note as the mission. He legally purchased the AK-47 and several high-capacity magazines. He also obtained a 9mm Taurus pistol, military fatigues, fireworks, and a flak jacket. On his weapons, he carved words like freedom, victory, and explosion. He spray-painted racial slurs onto the rifle's body. On the morning of January 17, 1989, he set his alarm clock, packed his gear, doused his car in gasoline, and drove to Cleveland Elementary. There was no manifesto, no demand for attention, just a plan to kill. Patrick Purdy shouldn't have been able to buy a gun. He shouldn't have been walking free. He shouldn't have been invisible to the system, but he was, and the children at Cleveland Elementary paid the price. He fired 106 rounds in under 3 minutes. 5 children were killed, 32 others were wounded. The world changed, but not enough. Tuesday, January the 17th, 1989. Recess had just begun at Cleveland Elementary School. It was just before noon. The sun was out. Hundreds of children, mostly between the ages of 6 and 10, were running, playing, climbing jungle gyms, trading snacks, and chasing each other across the playground. Inside a parked Toyota Corolla just behind the school, Patrick Purdy sat silently, watching. He had packed everything: a Norinco Type 56 semi-automatic rifle, an AK-47 clone, a Taurus 9mm pistol, a flak jacket, a backpack with over 300 rounds of ammunition, fireworks, and a note labeled "Freedom." At 11:37 a.m., Purdy doused his car with gasoline, lit a match, and walked away as flames engulfed the vehicle. In one hand, he carried his AK-47. In the other, a 9mm pistol. His trench coat flapped in the wind as he approached the school fence. No one noticed him at first, not until it was too late. At 11:38 a.m., Patrick Purdy opened fire. He sprayed bullets directly into the crowd of children near the basketball courts and jungle gym. He fired in bursts, controlled, deliberate. Teachers screamed. Children dropped instantly, some dead, others wounded. Chaos exploded. He didn't stop. In just 3 minutes, he fired 106 rounds, reloading with military speed. Students tried to flee, many of them second-language learners, confused by the shouting and unable to understand the orders screamed at them. Some ran, others hid under play structures. Some froze, paralyzed with fear. 5 children were killed on the playground that day, all between the ages of 6 and 9, all children of Southeast Asian immigrants. Just as police began to arrive, Patrick Purdy walked behind a portable classroom, placed his pistol under his chin, and pulled the trigger. He died instantly. The massacre was over in less than 3 minutes. Outside the school, panic exploded. Parents flooded the gates. Children who had survived were covered in blood, some theirs, some not. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but for many it was already too late. The local hospital was overwhelmed. Classrooms were turned into triage zones. Parents were told to wait in the auditorium to find out if their children were alive. Reporters swarmed the scene. The footage of crying children being let out by teachers aired across the country within hours. Stockton became a national headline, but for families there, it was a wound that would never fully heal. That night, and in the days that followed, Stockton held vigils, press conferences, and funerals. The city fell into mourning, but also into shock. How could a man with a known mental illness, a criminal record, and a documented history of hatred legally obtain a military-style assault rifle? And how could he use it to kill 5 children in broad daylight? It was the first mass school shooting with an assault rifle in America, but it wasn't the last.
The emergency rooms were full. Teams of doctors and nurses were busy with children who had bullet wounds to the stomach, chest, arms, and legs. 30 children in all. Most of the children went to Stockton hospitals, such as Dameron and St. Joseph's, and a little further south, the San Joaquin General Hospital. But because of the sheer number, some had to be transported to Modesto and to Lodi hospitals. Ambulances took most of the children to hospitals, but 3 Metaflight helicopters helped in the transportation. They took the most serious cases. Those medical teams had to make tough decisions.
All the paramedics that had immediate patients wanted us to take their patient. It was very hard because we can only take 2 patients, and to which 2 could we take? And that was probably the hardest part.
The first thing I wanted to do is just hug the little girl, but I knew that wasn't what I needed to do for her, because they're so helpless.
Some children, about half a dozen, were treated and released. Still, the trauma affects both child and parents.
Just come in here and sit down. He's okay. He's okay. He's okay. I was just trying to find you.
Some of the children are undergoing surgery, and the conditions range from critical to stable. A police officer was on hand to ask the children how to contact their parents and then tell them the bad news.
He's also got a small breast and a small wound to the left side of his rib cage.
The 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, taken to Doctors Hospital in Lodi, were doing well.
They're trying as hard as they can, and they're doing very well. Each one of them has a nurse assigned to them, and so we're trying to keep them real calm.
Are they scared still?
They seem to be. They're kind of quiet.
Lynette McGilvray just heard about her nephew, Ben Potep. Ben was shot in the foot. Her emotions run from relief to anger.
He'll be all right. I don't know about his foot, how his foot's going to be, but it's just kind of sickening. Doctors are working to help their young patients recover, and parents can only wait and pray. In Stockton, I'm Rich Ibera, Channel 3 reports.
Tonight, Stockton came together to honor the lives taken after a mass shooting at Cleveland Elementary School. Thanks for sticking with us tonight. I'm Chris Thomas.
And I'm Alicia Machado. In 1989, a shooter opened fire at that school, and many lives were changed in that community forever. ABC 10's Garj Paul Sunga shows us how the victims are being remembered 35 years later.
We've got children scattered all over the school. Some fatalities, some injured.
I still can't believe it's 35 years.
In 1989, for then 6-year-old Rob Young, his growing world forever changed.
I do remember just the panic and everybody taking off running and realizing that I had to get to my room, my classroom.
Shot in the chest and foot, Young was one of more than 30 students and teachers injured at Cleveland Elementary School in Stockton. 5 students were killed during a tragedy which saw 106 rounds fired in just 3 minutes.
This was 1989. School shootings didn't happen. It seemed like the term active shooter wasn't coined back then, and there was no response training for this type of incident back then.
The impact of the shooting is still being felt in this community, but the hope people who haven't felt it directly understand the ripple effect a mass shooting can cause.
The country stopped, the world stopped.
35 years later, survivors and families impacted by the shooting coming together to honor the victims and other lives lost to gun violence.
As it happened, I see kids falling, thinking that was a new game that played.
The moment allowing the tragedy not to be forgotten. In 1989, it was one of America's first mass school shootings.
Some days it does, and other days when I'm prepping for this vigil, it seems like yesterday.
Judy Walden was a second-grade teacher 35 years ago.
I want people to know that the impact of gun violence is horrible. I mean, it just ripples out from the person who has died or who was injured.
The Cleveland school massacre was considered one of the nation's worst school shootings at the time. Young, now a father of 4, worked in law enforcement, and now his work focuses on campus safety, hoping parents can use this tragedy as a learning lesson of having the hard talk with their kids so they know what to do.
It's not being paranoid around here, but unfortunately we live in a society where evil exists, and you have to be prepared.
That was ABC 10's Garj Paul Sunga reporting. Now, event organizers say more needs to be done to stop gun violence. Some also say more needs to be done to tackle mental health.